Murder in any degree is senseless, cold. But when it's a cold case, when the years drag on with no answers, no accountability, and no justice, it takes on an even darker weight. Now, imagine this was your mother. Imagine waking up every morning knowing she was taken from you in the most brutal way possible, shot inside her own home, the very place where she should have been safest. This wasn't random, it wasn't accidental, it was deliberate, personal. Someone out there knew she would be there that day. Someone watched her, waited for her, plotted her death. Was it a stalker lurking in the shadows, or someone closer, someone who knew her routines, her vulnerabilities, her life? That's the terrifying part. All these years later, we still don't know. This is the story of Cheryl Williams Frady, a 44-year-old mother from Dawsonville, Georgia, who in 2008 was found murdered in her own home. From day one, law enforcement knew it was a homicide, but despite that, the investigation stalled and the case barely made headlines. For nearly 17 years, Cheryl's name and story faded into the background. Her daughters left not only grieving, but fighting against silence. Frustrated with the lack of progress and afraid their mother would be forgotten, her daughters took matters into their own hands. They began pushing her story back into the spotlight, demanding the public remember Cheryl's face, her life, and her death. And finally, their persistence worked. Just last year, for the first time since Cheryl's murder, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation made a renewed public call for tips. Now, people in Dawsonville and around the country are finally talking about this case. And somewhere out there, someone knows something. Maybe it's a detail they missed. Maybe it's a memory they buried, or maybe it's you, listening right now, who could hold the missing piece to bring justice for Cheryl Williams Frady. Today I'll take you behind the headlines of this haunting unsolved case, a case that reminds us how easily lives can be stolen, how quickly communities can forget, and how long the shadows of silence can last. A mother in her own home, shot to death, and years of silence. Who killed Cheryl Williams Frady? Let's dive in. Cheryl Ann Williams wasn't just a daughter, a mother, or a friend. She was the kind of person who made the world feel brighter just by being in it. Born on Christmas Day in 1963 in Atlanta, Georgia, she carried that spirit of the holiday with her every single day of her life. Friends and family often described her as sunshine personified, a woman who radiated kindness, laughter, and joy wherever she went. When people say someone has a smile that could light up a room, they might as well have been talking about Cheryl. With her golden hair, sparkling eyes, and warm, infectious grin, she was beautiful on the outside, but it was her inner beauty, her generosity of spirit, and her ability to make everyone feel loved and seen that truly made her unforgettable. Cheryl didn't just walk into a room, she lit it up, and people naturally gravitated toward her. She never met a stranger. Christmas, of course, was her favorite holiday. A true Christmas baby, she poured her heart into making it magical for her family. She would handcraft her own ornaments, decorate with care, and find joy in every detail. Creativity ran through her veins. Cheryl was deeply artistic, whether she was crafting with her kids, working with flowers, or simply finding ways to turn everyday moments into something beautiful. She worked as a florist, treating every arrangement with personal care, whether it was a wedding bouquet or flowers for a grieving family. She made sure her work carried meaning. She ended up working at Michael's Arts and Crafts store, where her creativity and bubbly personality were a perfect fit. And Cheryl wasn't just admired for her beauty and creativity. She was the face of her family-owned business, a Budweiser promo girl for a time, and even what many called a community mom. People leaned on her, not just her kids, but friends and neighbors too, because she had that rare mix of strength and softness that made others feel safe. But her true joy in life was being a mother. To her daughters Jessica and Emily, and later to her son Sterling, Cheryl was nothing short of a superhero. Her kids were her everything, and they knew it. Jessica has said that her mom wasn't just the best mom in her eyes, she was the best mom in the world, and nobody else came close. Cheryl's love for her children was fierce, unwavering, and all-encompassing. Life didn't make things easy for Cheryl though. She married young and had 2 daughters, and when her first marriage ended, she faced the challenges of single motherhood head-on. She gave her girls the best life she could, showing them what strength and resilience looked like. Later, she entered another relationship that was marked by violence, but she survived it. She kept moving forward, determined to be strong for her children, to show them by example that they could survive anything too. So she remarried, had her son Sterling, and continued to build a life for her family. But tragedy and hardship seemed to stalk Cheryl at every turn. She survived multiple devastating car accidents, one with her baby boy in the car, another so severe it left her with a broken neck, broken ribs, broken fingers, and injuries so serious she was life-flighted to the hospital. She endured surgeries, months of painful recovery, and physical therapy, yet somehow, through all of it, she pushed forward. She had children who needed her, and nothing, not pain, not tragedy, not loss, was going to keep her from being their rock. Cheryl also endured heartbreaking personal losses. Her sister, her grandmother, her great-grandmother, and other close family members. She survived not one, but 2 divorces. Still, through every trial, she refused to let her spirit be broken. She was tough, resilient, and determined to not just survive, but to live, to keep laughing, to keep creating, to keep loving. Her daughters remember her as strong, radiant, and deeply nurturing, a woman who endured more than her share of hardship yet never stopped shining. To those who loved her, Cheryl wasn't just a mother, a daughter, or a friend. She was the center of their world. She was beauty and strength, gentleness and resilience, all wrapped into one incredible woman. That's who Cheryl was, a woman who deserved the world, and yet someone out there decided to take her from it. And that's what makes what happened to Cheryl so devastating. Someone selfishly, heartlessly decided to take her away, to rip this beautiful, vibrant woman from her kids, her family, and her friends, from the world. And they did it in the most cowardly way imaginable, while she was in her own home and the one place she should have felt the safest. A coward stole Cheryl's light and left her children to wake up every single day with a hole that can never be filled, with questions that may never have answers. Why her? Why someone so loved? Why in such a cruel and senseless way? Her children have carried that heartbreak every day since, reliving that moment, replaying that day over and over in her mind, searching for some sense of peace in a tragedy that never should have happened. By April 2008, Cheryl was once again doing what she did best, rebuilding her life. She had just separated from her second husband, though her daughters say it seemed to be on relatively good terms. She was also stepping into a new chapter, becoming a grandmother for the very first time. To her family, it felt like she was finally hitting her stride again, finding joy in starting fresh, something she had done so many times before. During this transition, Cheryl was living with her mother and stepfather at their home on Brookwood Drive in Dawsonville, Georgia. She had her own apartment in the basement, a space that gave her both independence and the comfort of being close to family. But on April 5th, 2008, everything changed. That was the day Cheryl's world and her daughter's world was ripped apart. It started out like any other day. Jessica, Cheryl's oldest daughter and her best friend, had plans to pick up her mom around 4 p.m. They were going shopping, getting ready for a cruise they were about to take together in the near future. When Jessica pulled into the driveway, her grandmother happened to get home from work at the same time. They walked inside together, expecting to find Cheryl getting ready. But almost immediately, something felt wrong. The house was quiet, too quiet. Jessica called out to her mom, but there was no answer. That didn't make sense. Cheryl knew she was coming. She was expecting her. Jessica and her grandmother made their way downstairs to the basement apartment, knocking and calling out again. Still, no response. Finally, they opened the door, and that was the moment Jessica's life would change forever. Her life completely shattered. Inside, she found her mother, Cheryl, unresponsive, her body peaceful, eerily still, like she had just fallen asleep. Jessica said she initially didn't know she'd been shot, but the silence cracked away when she saw the blood, and knew this wasn't rest. She didn't want to believe what she was seeing, and couldn't process that her vibrant, strong, beautiful mother was gone. Panic set in. Jessica, being a nurse herself, was so deep in shock that her training felt like it vanished. She ran for help, calling 911, sprinting to a neighbor's house, knowing they were also a nurse, begging them to come. But it was too late. Cheryl had been shot in the head, and from the very beginning, investigators ruled it a homicide. Cheryl had been murdered. A bullet had taken Cheryl's life in the sanctuary of her own home, an act so cruel and premeditated it sends chills even today. That quiet Dawsonville home instantly transformed into a crime scene, and just as the reality was sinking in for Jessica, her younger sister Emily pulled into the driveway. She remembers the rain falling, the somber expressions on people's faces, and that sinking feeling in her stomach before anyone even said the words out loud. She knew. She knew her mom was gone, no longer alive. Jessica and Emily, both just in their early 20s at the time, were left reeling. Who would do this? Who could hate their mother enough to kill her, and in such a cold, calculated way? Neither daughter could think of any enemies, no drama in Cheryl's life that would explain this. All they knew was that Cheryl had recently started dipping her toes into online dating, but hadn't gotten serious with anyone. The night before her death, they knew their mom had gone out to dinner with her ex-husband and their 11-year-old son to hand over custody of her son before her upcoming trip. And then, sometime around 1:30 a.m., she received a phone call. That was the last known contact anyone had with Cheryl, but to this day, police have never disclosed who called her or what was said. By 4 p.m. the next day, her daughter Jessica would discover her lifeless body. So the questions that have haunted her family and investigators for years remain. What exactly happened in those missing hours? Who pulled the trigger while Cheryl had her guard down in her own home? And one of the most haunting questions is, why has law enforcement never revealed who Cheryl last spoke to? Records show she made a phone call around 1:30 a.m., just hours before she was found. Normally, police zero in on the last person to have contact with a victim. It's often the very thread that unravels the truth. In an age where phone records and caller ID can be traced in seconds, why has that name never been made public? And here's where the details go silent. There's no official word on how, exactly, the bullet found its target. Was it fired through a window, punctured a wall? Did someone open her door, or did they just stand over her? You think in a case like this, law enforcement would share that information. Tracking the direction or source of the bullet could be a crucial clue. But even in an era of forensics and phone records, the detail remains missing. And when you consider the timing, when responders arrived, they already knew it was deliberate. It's haunting that such fundamental facts aren't in the public record. And until this case was reopened decades later, many in that neighborhood where Cheryl lived and the surrounding community didn't even know a murder or deadly shooting even took place, let alone a woman, a mother, had been killed in her own home. It leaves you wondering, is the silence a dead end? Or is someone protecting that piece of the puzzle? Something that could unlock the truth about who stole Cheryl's life and why. And that silence, the lack of clarity about something as basic as how Cheryl was shot, isn't the only strange part of this investigation. Her daughters say that from the very beginning, they've been left almost entirely in the dark about what happened to their mom. Jessica and Emily describe years of frustration, saying calls to the Dawson County Sheriff's Office or the Georgia Bureau of Investigation often went unanswered, or worse, ignored altogether. Most of what they know about their mom's horrifying fate comes not from investigators, but from Jessica's own memories of the day she discovered her mother's body. To this day, the final hours of Cheryl's life remain a mystery. How she spent them, when she took her last breaths, those questions still don't have answers. And of course, law enforcement has to keep certain details close to the vest to protect an active investigation. But her own daughters, knowing so little, being left with no information about their mother's death or even a possible suspect, that raises questions of its own. The months that followed brought almost no clarity. Jessica says she was interviewed for just 30 minutes immediately after finding her mother and was never contacted again. Emily, her mother's other daughter, was never interviewed at all. And even more shocking, their father, Cheryl's first husband, was only spoken to for 10 minutes. And that's only because he reached out to police a month later to offer what he knew. As Emily put it, "We know our father wasn't involved. But in any normal investigation, the ex-husband would be one of the first people police reach out to. That made us suspicious that the case was not either being handled properly or maybe wasn't being investigated at all." The only thing investigators ever shared with the family was that they didn't believe there was a wider threat to the community. But for Cheryl's daughters, that answer wasn't just vague, it was almost insulting. With no clear direction from law enforcement, Jessica and Emily were left to do what so many families of victims and cold cases end up doing, building their own theories. And both daughters have always agreed on one thing: whoever killed their mother wasn't a stranger. Jessica remembers there were no signs of forced entry at her grandmother's home. Nothing was stolen, nothing appeared out of place. Whoever did this knew Cheryl, knew where she lived, and knew she'd be in that basement apartment when they pulled the trigger. To Jessica and Emily, that's what makes this case so chilling. The person who murdered their mom wasn't some faceless intruder. It was likely someone close, someone who planned it, someone who knew her routine, someone who nearly 2 decades later is still walking free. And that's where the theories begin. If it wasn't a stranger, then who was it? Was it someone from her past who couldn't let go? A jealous ex, a secret relationship turned dangerous, or maybe someone who knew her routines all too well and chose that exact moment when she was most vulnerable to strike. Theories have swirled for years, but the cruel truth is that without answers from investigators, Cheryl's daughters are left to imagine scenarios more chilling than anything they ever could have prepared for. And here's the part that still doesn't sit right. For years, decades really, Cheryl's case barely made a ripple outside of the initial coverage. No updates, no arrests, no press conferences, nothing. Unlike other unsolved murder cases that stay in the headlines year after year, Cheryl's story seemed to fade into silence. And why? Was it because investigators had so little to go on? Maybe. But wouldn't that make it even more important to get her face, her name, and her story out there? The more people who know, the more tips that could surface. Especially now in the era of true crime communities, online sleuths, and social media, where one detail shared decades later can crack a case wide open. Instead, Cheryl's daughters spent 16 long, agonizing years waiting in the dark, with almost no updates and little transparency. They started to realize if investigators weren't going to keep their mom's case alive in the public eye, they had to. Jessica in particular became relentless, commenting on nearly every single post the GBI and Dawson County Sheriff's Office made, reminding them and everyone watching that her mother's case was still unsolved. Phone calls were made, emails were sent, and when those efforts didn't spark movement, the sisters turned to the public themselves. They launched a Facebook page, Justice for Cheryl Williams Frady, determined to make sure their mom's story wouldn't be forgotten.
For so long, like she didn't matter to anyone except for us. And that's a terrible feeling.
And it worked. Slowly, people started to talk. The page gained traction. Her case began popping up in podcasts, on Reddit threads, in online discussions. Strangers who had never met Cheryl were suddenly learning her name. That visibility mattered. It meant her daughter's fight was keeping her memory alive, and maybe, just maybe, bringing her closer to justice. Eventually, investigators took notice. In 2024, 16 years after Cheryl's murder, the GBI finally shared her story again, this time on social media and local news, asking for tips. It was the first time in over a decade they had publicly spoken about her case. To Jessica and Emily, it was both a relief and a heartbreak. Relief because people were finally paying attention again. Heartbreak because, why did it take this long? How many tips or witnesses might have been lost to time because those calls for help weren't made years earlier?
Her case has reached people overseas. People are now talking about it. All of these people and actually know her name.
Still, that renewed attention sparked movement. For the first time ever, investigators began directly communicating with Cheryl's daughters. They shared that new interviews were being conducted, leads were being followed up on, and even admitted that a suspect had been on their radar since the very beginning. "There's a suspect, and we weren't aware this person was being considered until last year," Emily said. "We were told this person has been on the police's radar since the very beginning. So why hasn't an arrest been made? That's what I want to know. For so long, I told myself we would never get closure. But in the last year, we've had some really positive interactions with police. And finally, I feel like it's possible to solve this case. That we have a glimmer of hope," Jessica told the Daily Mail. The sisters don't have all the answers, but one thing is clear. They refuse to stop. Thanks to their persistence, more people are hearing Cheryl's story than ever before. Every time Cheryl's name is spoken, every time her case is shared, there's hope that someone, somewhere, will come forward with the missing piece. As Emily put it, our intention to this is to continue to bring enough awareness to this that law enforcement has to make a move and move forward with a case they say is active. They need to show everyone why it's active and what they're doing to help solve this case. Cheryl's daughters said they won't stop trying to find an answer. They owe that to her mom. She didn't die because she had cancer. She got sick. She died because someone made the choice to take her for whatever their selfish reasons were. Jessica said they thought they had that right. Even with renewed attention on her case and steps being taken toward justice, the heartbreak for Cheryl's family remains unrelenting. Every day, her daughters live with the knowledge that someone took their world, their light, their best friend from them.
It was very tragic, and to not, for the GBI to not have made an arrest in this case and not have figured out who actually was behind this, that's very disturbing for a small community. They don't know if it's somebody close to Cheryl or if it was just some random act. I tend to think, I think as the girls do, that it was likely somebody that was closer to Cheryl rather than a random act of violence. To think it was just some random act, I think is really not valid.
Cheryl has missed birthdays, weddings, and monumental life moments. Moments she should have celebrated with her children and grandchildren. She only got to be a grandmother for a single year before her life was stolen. She should have been there for wedding dress fittings with her eldest, cheering at soccer games, holding new babies, and sharing the love that came so naturally to her. Instead, her legacy lives in memory carried by her children, who fight every day to honor her. Since her death, Cheryl has missed the births of 4 more grandchildren. She never held them, never saw their first steps, never shared holidays or milestones with them. Her eldest grandkid was just a baby when she died, and he has no memory of the Nana who adored him, and the youngest grandchildren will never know her at all. Cheryl missed birthdays, graduations, holidays, the countless little moments that make a life whole. Cheryl's own mother, Bobby, even had to endure the unimaginable pain of burying both her daughter and her sister, Tanya, and never truly recovered. And Cheryl's mother heartbreakingly passed away in November 2024, never seeing her daughter get the justice she rightfully deserves. And still, someone walks free. Every day, Cheryl's killer lives with the secret of the life they took, a life that cannot be returned. As Jessica posted on the Justice for Cheryl Williams Frady Facebook page, someone made the selfish decision to take her. After all she had survived, after all she had lived through, and always came out on the other side, the coward took away her ability to fight, to conquer, to live. He ripped her from her role as my superhero. He deserves to face the consequences. He shouldn't be walking free after he put out a flame as bright as hers. My mother deserves justice. And Emily added a warning to the person who took her mother away from her, her sister, and her brother. Someone out there thinks they got away with something, but I want them to know their day is coming. We don't have any intentions of stopping until they're caught. Her daughters say that public awareness could make a difference. By following Cheryl's Facebook page, sharing her story, and keeping her memory alive, the community can help ensure her killer does not hide in the shadows. It's not fair that someone walks among us, knowing the destruction they caused, while Cheryl's family grieves every day. As Emily says, Cheryl's killer could be anywhere, maybe still in Georgia, maybe not, but the world should know what they're capable of. Every share, every tip, every mention of Cheryl keeps the pressure on and increases the chances that justice will finally be served, and that no other family will have to endure the pain Cheryl's loved ones carry. Her life was stolen too soon. Her family deserves answers, and her killer deserves to be found. Cheryl loved working with flowers, and they reflected her vibrant, sunny personality. Her daughters, Jessica and Emily, remember her blonde, lush locks and bright smile, and they often picture her skipping through a field of daisies, one of her favorite flowers. For them, daisies will always bring memories of their mother's warmth, joy, and light. Cold cases can be solved, even decades later. Take the story of 6-year-old William Deshaun Hamilton, which we shared on this channel and whose identity was unknown for more than 20 years after he was found discarded near a church cemetery. His case became one of Georgia's most heartbreaking unsolved mysteries, but one single tip finally reopened the investigation and brought justice for William, decades after his death. That's the power of speaking up and sharing information. We can do the same for Cheryl. Every share of this podcast episode, every visit to the family's Facebook page, every conversation about her story helps keep her memory alive and increases the chances that someone with vital information will step forward. Imagine if this were your mother, grandmother, or loved one. You'd want justice for them. Together we can help bring her killer to justice and ensure this never happens to another family. No detail is too small. Even the tiniest piece of information could make a difference. The GBI is still actively pursuing leads in this case, and tips, anonymous or not, can be submitted by calling 1-800-597-TIPS. Follow Cheryl's family's Facebook page to stay updated on new information they share, and help spread the word by sharing this episode. Every mention, every conversation, every act of awareness matters. By keeping Cheryl's story alive, we honor the light that she brought into this world and help her family find the closure they deserve. Who knows, you may be the one who holds crucial details that finally turns this cold case into a solved case. This has been Joshua John with Behind the Headlines, and until next time, stay safe.